Read Replication. Hello everybody, this is Ben Finkel, and in this nugget we're going to talk about how you can set up Read Replication with your Google Cloud SQL instance. You can utilize the Read Replication functionality that's available inside of MySQL to create cool read-only backups for your database. So Read Replication is kind of like a more efficient or better performing alternative to a wholesale backup and restore operation in your database, or an export and import. Those will take your entire database, or at least large portions of your database, and move them around into new instances. Your Read Replication happens at a much more granular, discrete level. It's usually statement-based, or in this case, row-based. And what happens is you start with your database, we call the master database, which is a read-write database. And every write that comes into this master database is logged and then subsequently written out to one or more slaves, or replicas as they're called. And these replicas are read-only databases. So the idea is that you have one database where your writes are coming in, and then you have one or more other databases where people can read that information out. They can perform analytics, perform reporting, etc. against that data as it's changing without interfering with the master database. So Google Cloud SQL allows you to do this. It allows you to create these read-only replicas of a single master Google Cloud SQL instance. And these read replicas are ideal for low write, high read scenarios where you don't want the data that's being written or the activity that's writing to your master database to interfere with the people who are trying to read from your database. So you get nice, consistent performance both on the writing side as well as on the reading side, the reporting side of it. Right? And that can scale up really large. So you can have 1 or 10 or 20 or 100 read replicas. You can handle all of the reading that might be going on against your database and not interfere with the writing that might be going on against your database. So you get performance savings on both the read and the write because they're not interfering with each other. And of course, Google Cloud SQL allows you to replicate this to both an internal Cloud SQL instance, so you can have it all inside of Google Cloud SQL, or you can replicate to an external slave. Just has to be a MySQL database that supports replication and has access to your Google Cloud instance. Now, one quick important vocabulary point, read replication is not, or it's really distinct from the DR replication that gets performed automatically for you behind the scenes by Google Cloud SQL. So when you create an instance, you create it in a region, say US Central, and it is replicated between those regions, or between the zones inside that region, automatically for you. That way, in case a zone goes down for whatever reason, your database is still available, still up and running in a different zone within that same region. That's a different process. That's distinct and separate from read replication. That's happening automatically for you. Those are all read-write instances. It's completely transparent. This is for creating replicas that you, as the developer, as the administrator, have control over. Now, a couple of rules about read replication in Google Cloud SQL. For starters, it uses row-based replication as defined by MySQL. And row-based replication means that the entire row that gets changed is written out into your binary log. That means that there is a performance and storage overhead associated with using read replication. You have to have binary logging enabled, and every row that's changed is written out into the log so that the replicas, the slaves, can monitor that log, watch that log, and make those changes appropriately to themselves. If you have writes on your database that affect a large number of rows, then you're going to have a large amount of data inside of your binary log, and you pay for the space that that binary log takes up. That's part of your total database usage inside of your Google Cloud SQL instance. It's also important to note that all master settings are replicated back down to the replica or the slave instances, and that includes the root password and the users table. So as you make security updates to your master instance, those security updates will propagate down to your replicas. And you cannot delete a master instance until all the replicas are either promoted or themselves deleted. And promoted is promoting it from a replica to a standalone database. You may have an instance where you want to move up a database and promote it to a regular read-write database, thus breaking the replication connection. So, requires at least one backup and binary logging enabled. You have to have backups turned on in order for replication to work, and you have to have binary logging enabled. Both of those settings have to be true. And this is how the data gets from your master database down into your replica. Your replica activation policy is going to have to be always. That means your replica is always on and always running, and you're going to accrue charges associated with an instance that is always on and always running. Because it's always on and always running, it's always got a connection to the master instance. And that means even if you have your master instance set to shut down after a period of inactivity, the master instance never actually becomes passive. So your master instance is going to be always running as well. So in a most basic scenario, you're going to have two instances that are running 100% of the time. Now, when you create your replicas, they are asynchronous replication by default. That's the replication that happens across zones I was just talking about. But you can change that to be synchronous replication. You're going to slow down your writes a little bit. You're going to lose some performance with synchronous replication, but you can set that up if you'd like. Setting up read replication is very easy to do. You can do it in both the web UI, the developer's console, as well as the Cloud SDK from the command line interface. If you do it through the developer's console, the first thing you got to do, the first step, is to make sure that you have backups enabled and that you've turned on binary logging. Like we talked about, binary logging is absolutely required. It's going to need to be turned on, and a backup will have to be created first. When you come down to your instance itself, your master instance, you say create read replica. You're going to get a control panel that looks a lot like creating a new SQL instance, but it's going to have a lot fewer options because it only enables the options that you can change on a slave replica. And that will only work if a backup has actually run with binary logging enabled. So you might have 5 backups, then you go in and enable binary logging. Well, until a new backup is made, you can't actually create the read replica. But once you do, you've got a new replica slave instance. You can start and stop it from the same control panel inside of the instance, just start and stop. And if you want to promote it up to a standalone read-write instance, you choose promote replica. It'll give you a note that it's going to retain the data as of the point where you promote it, but it will no longer receive replication updates from the master. It's now a freestanding database at that point. From the command line interface, it's equally easy. You can use the backup start time and the enable bin log commands, switches on gcloud SQL instances to turn on backups and enable binary logging. Of course, if you need to do both, you can use both of those switches in one single command. I've just have them split out here for demonstration purposes. And then, in order to create a replica, all you're really going to do is create a new instance and pass in the master instance name switch. Pass in the instance that you want to be the master, and Google Cloud SQL will create a new instance based on that instance that you define as the master. Pretty easy, right? If you want to turn on or off replication, you simply go to the gcloud SQL instances patch command and use the enable database replication or no enable database replication. Now, an important note here, and the same is true of the promote command down here, you're working with my instance replica when you perform these commands. You don't control replication from the master. You control replication from the slave. It's kind of highlighted here with these commands. So the slave is the one that's doing all the work. That's where you start and stop replication. You promote the slave, etc. The master is by and large totally unaware of those slave instances. Now, you can also set up replication to an external MySQL database, and to do that you have to enable binary logging, and then the rest of it is configured through the MySQL commands to set up replication between 2 different instances. So you can go ahead and check out the MySQL documentation on read replication to learn more about how that's done. That's outside the scope of this particular nugget. So that concludes this nugget on read replication inside of Google Cloud SQL. We talked about what read replication is, how it's a nice, efficient, high-performing way to get a replication of your database without doing an entire backup or an export and import, and it keeps it up to date asynchronously with writes that are performed to the master database. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.